Okay, hi, we got Jagesh Kolala. Hey Jagesh, welcome here.
Hi, sir.
Okay, Jagesh is one of the CAT toppers, by the way. Jagesh, what's your expected raw score right now?
So I'm expecting around 237.
237,
with a
that's
slate of 74, 70 and 93.
74, 73 and 93. That's a 93 then?
Quant.
That's amazing, guys. That's amazing. In fact, I'm sure the results are still not out, but I'm sure there'll be no one closer to this. So, Jagesh, congratulations for this
Thank you, sir.
great massive score once again.
Thank
So,
you,
did you think when you were preparing, "Ye aa jayega, matlab, I'm going to be like one of the toppers and
So I wasn't really thinking about it. I was just trying to maximize myself. My motivation was I shouldn't be regretting after my exam that I could have done something better. So
Mhm.
just trying to cover up my weak areas and focus on the exam rather than after the exam.
Okay, you've been killing it. In fact, JE rank was also good. What was the JE rank?
Yeah, my J rank was 242.
242. उसके बाद he's killing it. So, but nevertheless, how's the feeling? I mean, after getting this score, are you still down to earth? Already you're like getting phone calls from friends and family and saying, okay, congratulations. How is it?
No, I'm still down to earth. I haven't really told a lot of people apart from my close friends.
Okay, that's amazing. That's amazing. So, what are your options if you get? Is it IIM Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Calcutta? What is it? In the ABC series? What is it?
Yeah, so I'll be targeting the ABC series alphabetically.
Okay,
in the same sense.
That's
yeah.
great. That's good. What are your 2 cents? People who are listening to us right now, all of these 2.5 lakh odd people are appearing for this exam.
Hmm.
So, are you prepared for how many months? 6 months, 1 year? What is the ideal time you spent?
Yeah, so I started roughly around January, but my core preparation started in May.
Okay, you started in May. That's so you got a May, June, July, August, September, October. So approximately 6 months of
7
time.
months, yeah.
Good. How many mocks you gave around?
I gave around 35 to 40 mocks.
Oh,
in total.
lovely. You focus on the basic mocks or the advanced or the intensive one? What was the strategy?
So I began with basic and then I went on to intensive and then towards when I was close to the exam I focused on the advanced mocks because intensive was too intensive and the paper was more towards the advanced side. So I thought that to get into the exam mode it's better if I took the advanced when I'm closer to the exam.
Okay. So do you think while giving mocks, the intensive one was like about 15-20% higher than the whole thing? Advanced one was real one, basic one was around 20% lower than the real CAT?
Yeah, precisely.
What's your precisely? Okay, that's great. And let's talk about various subjects. Let's talk about quants, verbal and DILR. What's your strength out of the all three? Your mark says quants, but what's your strength?
I would say quants.
Quants is the strength.
Yeah.
How was the paper? How was the quant examination when you gave in CAT?
Yeah, so when I started my quant paper, so the first question that came to me was actually quite difficult, and the first question that I attempted went wrong. So in the initial 10 minutes when I used to give my mocks, I used to complete about 6 to 7 questions, picking out the easy questions. But out here I completed only 2 to 3 questions in 10 minutes. So that says it all that the paper was quite tough, and it was unexpected that the paper would be that tough.
Okay. So paper was tough. Even for toppers, the paper was tough. For people who are listening to me and they're saying like, oh, "Sir, हमारे तो quant में number नहीं आया." Paper was tough for me. Even for the best of the kids, the paper was genuinely tough. So what are the strategy when you were preparing for quant section? How did you segregate the time? कैसा preparation किया आपने?
So my strategy for the quant paper was 10 minutes 6 questions, 20 minutes 13 questions, 30 minutes about 17 to 18 questions, or rather more 20 questions, and then towards the last half an hour I would focus on the remaining 14 or 15 questions and a couple of difficult questions which would be there.
Okay, so when you jump into the same, you pick up the easier ones first.
Yeah. So my strength was arithmetics basically. So when I would start, I would first look out searching for arithmetic questions. All the questions would be shorter in length and would sound to be easier, would look to be easier. That was the way I went about it. But I always kept geometry for the end because I was not that comfortable with geometry.
Okay. So I know this guy personally. So he's the guy of killing and sticking to the strengths first. I know him whether he's giving any interviews in the college. So stick to the strengths is what he wants to say.
Yeah,
so arithmetic, people who are preparing for CAT, they don't know what arithmetic is. It's time, speed, distance, time and work, mixed relegation. In fact, chapter number 6 to 11 of your basic books if you have it. And stay glued to this topic for sure. I think this is the crux of the CAT past a couple of years, right?
Yeah, this has been the crux of the past couple of years. Even this year, they were a lot more focused on arithmetic over the other subjects. So a majority of the questions were from arithmetic, and the difficult questions were also from arithmetic. I would say the easier questions were from geometry and other stuff. So I felt that they were more focused on people forming equations, like translating a word problem into an equation was their focus area during the CAT exams.
That was the whole thing. Good. And how many questions were there from functions, maxima, minima, or graphical representation? Did you find any questions there?
Yeah, so about a couple, 2 or 3 questions, not more than that.
2 or 3 questions. Okay, that's great. So we got Jagesh Goldwala here. So how was logical reasoning a day? What's your expected score, raw score in the LRDI?
I'm expecting 70.
70.
Right.
Okay, 70 is that's a good score. That's a good score for sure. So how did you find the paper and how do you prepare for it?
So yeah, the trend was that since the last 2 years the LRDA section is getting difficult, and the questions are more trickier rather than being lengthy. They are going towards a more trickier side, and they're not focusing on calculations as much. They want people to get the logic behind the questions. So, but this year I would say that the questions were a bit lengthier and less trickier in a sense.
Okay. And how did you prepare for this section? You said you spent about 6 months of time. How do you actually prepare for the whole thing?
Yeah, so firstly, I focused on logical reasoning when I began in May. So all the arrangement questions and linear circular arrangement, all selection questions, I tried to master them all in 1.5 months. And post that, so I basically classified the LRDA section into 3 categories. One was typical LR questions, one would be like general puzzles questions, and third would be data interpretation, like all the graphs and etc. All those questions into one type. So like firstly I took up the typical LR questions which are there, and I tried to master all the characteristic problems in all those in that section. And later on I came to the data interpretation set. I focused on calculations and understanding the various graphs which are used during the examinations in the past years as well. And then puzzles is like the more you solve, the more mocks you take, the more exposure you get for that. So there's no definite strategy for puzzle type questions, except that you keep on revising what mistakes you have done, and you should recollect the strategy you used for that particular question.
And LRDA, you said you should do 3 different parts. So when you said the standard basic questions, what were those standard logical reasoning puzzles? Are they blood relations, coding, decoding stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, great. So you mastered those, that was the strength?
Right, yeah.
That's great. So most of the people do it wrong. They fix up on the puzzles piece only. So the puzzles is the is the topic number B as per Jagesh, who's sitting with us. So and the third is the data interpretation. So in fact that was my strategy when I was preparing long back for my CAT. That's great. That's LRDA. How was it verbal ability? So I remember seeing you in the verbal Wednesdays and coming online sessions. So were they helpful?
Yeah, so in terms of inference-based questions, as we covered in a couple of lectures, and then with respect to Norman Lewis vocabulary questions, it was pretty good. So like firstly, when you read the passage, it's essential that you get the crux of the passage. So for that, you need to have a good vocabulary. So that the Norman Lewis lectures actually helped.
Okay.
And with respect to the inference-based questions, you need to understand what this paper setter is thinking. So from that point of view, the verbal variants were also pretty helpful.
Do you remember any one of the vocabulary words or anything which I trained or anything which I say in the verbal? That's a tricky question.
Loquacious.
Let me just say.
Loquacious.
Loquacious. Okay, you
I
remember
remember that entire lecture in which we were focusing on those the verbos and the words which are basically depend on the words which are related to speaking a lot.
The verbose, the glib, the smooth talker, etc.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember that. You remember that? I remember you winning a book also in one of the contests. That's good. People who don't know, I give away books. By the way, Jagesh won a book. In fact, one of the first few. That was in July or something.
Right. Yeah.
That's true. That's amazing. Good. So how was the paper? I mean, you prepared very well. I know you're a very good reader. He reads a lot, by the way, kids. So what's your 2 cents? 6 months a student have approximately 1 year, and they have to kill and get a 99.9 in verbal ability. So what's your strength?
With respect to, so firstly you need to get into the hang of reading. So I started with reading basic newspaper articles from the Hindu and from the Times of India. Then I went on to reading normal articles from the Guardian and the New York Times, and post that I went on to opinions and editorials from the Hindu, which are actually pretty good.
Great. Why? That's a good thing. Why Guardian and New York Times?
Because I've heard that many of the passages actually come from foreign newspapers.
You're so right. People who've been attending Verbal Wednesday, they always say that Guardian and New York Times are the place from where they pick up the reading competition. Like this year's CAT also, it was from Guardian for that matter. Great. So what else did you prepare in Verbal?
Yeah, so then I went. So first, the first emphasis was on improving the reading speed and the comprehension part, and the second emphasis was always cracking the questions. So what I did was I segregated the questions into different question types, and I found out that I had a particular weakness in the inference type questions and the main idea central idea type questions.
Yeah.
So like I then focused on each of these and just developed a strategy behind those, and yeah, it was so like at the end. I just lacked up all my questions which went wrong in the final paper was CR based questions.
Okay.
So the inference and the main idea, the central idea type questions I think I developed a pretty good strategy for the same. So
Okay.
that went pretty well for me.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, critical reasoning is one thing where you feel that you've reasoned out
Right.
critically pretty well, but the answer is pretty wrong. This happens in GMAT as well. So nevertheless, this is great. So you've been attending sessions with me, with Anisha at Cat King Powai. So were those sessions helpful? Anisha spent a lot of time with you.
Yeah.
So how are those sessions? What were they based on?
So like the strategies that I developed for the inference type questions and the central idea type questions, I developed along with her. Like we used to sit one-on-one and we used to solve those questions. And secondly, from the verbal ability point of view, from the odd man out or summary, and the last one which is their parajumbles. So that was also where she helped me out pretty lot.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update from Cat King.